Hello and welcome to the Gaggle What We Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, um, Donald Trump has been kind of busy. Well, not just with his signing all these executive orders, which is quite a task in itself, but he's been giving interviews and speeches in which he has he's discussed many things, but he's give us some such hints as to where he's going on the issue of Russia and Ukraine and trying to secure peace there. So he on I think on Wednesday he gave an interview to Sean Hannity, and which was shown in two parts on Wednesday and Thursday. And then on Friday, on Thursday as well, later on in the day on Thursday, he gave a speech, by video conference to Davos, which is not where you would normally expect him. This is the hotbed of globalists and corporate titans. But nonetheless, he was there, and of course, they greeted him in an appropriately fawning, slavish manner. But I want to first take a look at the Hannity interview and what he said there, and we can find that. Well, I mean, look again. This. Yeah, let's try again. So, all right, so let's see if we can get this get
Okay, that's going to widen the screen. Okay.
yes, that's right, but I need to get the
Well, I can see it.
yeah, but I okay.
There you go. Oh, I see. Okay.
You sent out.
In other words, technology is changing.
And we have to be in the front of it.
We have to be.
And you said that about AI, which I believe is
right.
brilliant. You put out a truth on Vladimir Putin today.
Yeah.
You seem to have had a relationship with him and you've talked about ending this war in Europe. And you want to end it quickly. How quickly can it end?
Should end immediately. Should have never started. That would never have started if I were. I used to talk to Putin about it. Ukraine was the apple of his eye, but there was no chance that he would ever do it. And he didn't do it. For 4 years, he didn't do it.
Have you spoken to him?
I don't want to say, but I will tell you, it's got to end. And if you look at I'm just talking from a human life. I don't care, Russia, Ukraine, US. These are human beings that are just being slaughtered on this battlefield by the millions. They've already died in cities. The cities are like demolition sites there. Many people died. One thing with the Ukraine war, you're going to find many more people died than think. This is a war that should have never started. Biden did a horrible, horrible job in allowing that war to start. Should have never started. It would have never started. It wasn't even tough from that standpoint. One thing, so he allowed energy to go up, way up. If he brought it down, the war wouldn't have started because Putin wouldn't have had the money. Putin makes all his money on energy. And Biden let it go to a record, and Putin had so much money, he was able to do it. So, but that's only one thing. That wasn't even the biggest reason. What was said at the time was so bad. I said, he's going to drive that guy into doing this.
Minor incursion?
Well, he used the word minor incursion, but he said things worse than that. And Putin shouldn't have done it too. I mean, I'm not blaming only what Putin shouldn't have done it. He shouldn't have done it, and it has to stop. Do you know they've lost about 850,000 Russian soldiers and 700,000 Ukrainian soldiers?
And the Ukraine has been devastated.
Devastated.
Will it be a negotiated settlement, and will you lead the negotiations?
Well, I hope so. And I put out a truth today that's really strong, and I mean it. And if they don't do that, I'm going to put massive
If they don't
tariffs.
do what?
If they don't settle this war soon, like almost immediately, I'm going to put massive tariffs on Russia and massive taxes and also big sanctions. And I don't want to do that. You know, I love the Russian people. They're great people. I don't want to do that, but we've got to get this war ended. And if they don't make a settlement like fast, and Zelensky, I will say this, he wants to settle now. He's had enough. He shouldn't have allowed this to happen either.
No.
You know, if he's no angel,
Right.
He shouldn't have allowed this war to happen. First of all, he's fighting a much bigger entity, okay? Much bigger. When he was, you know, talking so brave and so, now two things happened. They were brave, but we gave them billions of dollars. The United States spent $200 billion more than Europe. Why did we spend more? You know why? Because Biden never asked Europe to spend more. They spent 200.
It became a U.S.-Russia proxy war because of.
Look, Zelensky was fighting a much bigger entity, much bigger.
Amazing they now use the word proxy.
That.
Yeah.
Because we could have made a deal, and it would have been a deal that would have been, it would have been a nothing deal. I could have made that deal so easily. And Zelensky decided that I want to fight. You know, they have 30,000 army tanks. Russia has 30,000 army tanks. Zelensky had none practically. You don't fight those. Now then we started pouring equipment, pouring. And they had the bravery to use the equipment, but in the end, that's a war has to be settled. So the field is interesting because it's very flat. It's great farmland, okay? Very flat. There's no protection. The only thing that's stopping a bullet that gets shot, they can go for miles, is a human body. And they're being hit left and right. And they're losing millions of people. Young, beautiful people are dying on the battlefield. And it's got to stop.
Zelensky did say for the first time that he would be open to a negotiating settlement.
He says that. You should have said that a long time ago.
You put Iran in a different category. I keep reading, and I talk to my
They're
sources.
religious zealots. It's different.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. Kim Jong-un.
Yeah.
When I came in, I met with Obama. Right there, we sat. And we talked. I said, what's the biggest threat? North Korea.
You guys were yucking it up in the church.
Yeah, we were. Someday I'll tell you what we said.
Someday you'll tell.
No, we had.
All right. So,
Too bad Sean Hannity doesn't know how to ask.
no, that's right. It's a problem, but this. I mean, we talked about this the other day. So this follows on from his comments that he made on Monday and Tuesday, in which he was saying Putin had better settle. It makes sense for him to settle, and therefore, you know, if he doesn't settle, then I'm going to impose economic penalties. So first of all, it was a sanctions. He said, yeah, sanction, but then I prefer to use tariffs, which is very puzzling because, you know, Russia and the United States really don't do very much business. So what kind of tariffs is he going to impose? But he could impose sanctions. I mean, no question. I mean, he could certainly escalate what the sanctions, and particularly what Trump likes to do, which is to hit third parties. So in the comments he was making on Monday and Tuesday, he seemed to be blaming everything on Russia. That Zelensky wants to settle, but Putin doesn't seem to want to settle. So he's going to, you know, take it out on Putin. Here, he seems to be taking a more even-handed. He seems to be criticizing Zelensky as much as he's criticizing Putin. So it's not at all easy from this to discern which way he's going to go, but that's but you know he's clearly the tone is very different from the Biden administration. I mean, he's very different. It's more like he's saying, I'm going to bang heads together. You know, I don't care about the rights and wrongs. You know, it's sort of kind of condescending. It's like children. I don't care who started it. You're going to settle this.
Which direction is he going in? We don't know, but we know he's going. Okay, that's what we learned. I'm sorry, but I think that's the case here. We haven't heard a whole lot from Keith Kellogg, which is kind of
Right.
interesting too.
Right.
Um,
Or from Marco Rubio, which is
or
also
Marco Rubio. Well, his first assignment apparently is Panama. So, but it's curious what he. First of all, Sean Hannity is one of the worst interviewers ever. Okay, where does Trump getting these
Oh
numbers?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right.
I mean,
They're very strange because he also well we'll talk about this when we come to talk about the tweets that he sent out. I mean, he gets strange numbers about Russian casualties during World War II. He just I don't know where he just seems to. I always thought somebody wrote those truths for him, but it does sound like him. I mean, I think he writes them himself.
I, I'm, yeah. I mean, in the past, it was very Trumpian. I mean,
Right.
there's a very specific style. Um, I don't know, George, if I had such a lofty position, I would send all my drafts to you and to proofread them to make sure I had them right. Okay.
Right, exactly. I mean, if you're the president, you have, hungry staff, eager to make themselves useful to you. I mean, they're all basically hanging around outside his office. Please, please, please give me something to do to make myself useful to you. So it's odd that he would just simply, no, I'm going to
Well,
do it myself.
well, I'm even in the last, let's say, 36 hours, I feel I have to start reversing myself because I think the last time we talked about this in depth, you could see that Trump, he knows it's a pressing issue. He's a bit frustrated, and he knows he's going to have to start moving. And I think that he is doing that right now. He is lining up his negotiating position. What I find frustrating is that the briefing books or the people he's listening to, they're giving him a warped perspective on how to move forward. Though I agree with you. I mean, it's interesting the way he's phrasing because he's putting distancing Donald Trump from this conflict. It's this guy and this
Right,
guy and
right. No,
another guy. There was another guy that let it happen.
right, but that's right.
That framing is really
That's
important.
it. Exactly. So it's Biden's fault. He should never have let it happen. And then of course it's also the Europeans' fault because they've been ripping us off. And then it's of course it's Putin's fault and it's Zelensky's fault. And then he's going to come along and he's just going to knock some sense into everybody. Remarkable how little interest he takes in the rights and wrongs of this conflict. I mean, he never seems to address that issue at all. But
It's real. George is absolutely right because the last administration, what were the first few words out of their mouth? Protecting the
that's
Ukrainian
it.
democracy.
That's
Okay.
it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Among a litany of other things. Trump doesn't mention
No,
any of them at
right.
all. Okay. Because in a very interesting way, um, remember during the CNN debate, the killing has to stop. He hasn't deviated from
Yes,
that.
indeed, you do. No, no, no.
No, he's that's what his benchmark is, to stop the
Right.
killing. Now, all of his numbers, and again, I know Americans love to say we're paying for everything. Actually, everyone, if you compare American aid and European aid, all in, the Europeans have given more. Okay,
Yeah,
now
yeah.
not on military hardware and things like that, but if we were to totalize both
Right,
pots,
right. But yeah,
Europeans have, and the electorate is telling the European
right,
leaders
right.
how to
No,
deal with it.
that's right. And of
On
course,
that one, Trump is wrong.
yeah, well, no question. And of course, the United States has done very well out of this war, unlike the
Yes.
Europeans. So it's like if you think, well, who's done well out of it? Well, the Americans have done well out of it. Not Europe has done very badly out of it. But let's take a look now at then what he said at Davos. And yeah, well, so first, let's take a look at this this truth that he sent out, which is what Hannity was referring to. Which and I think he sent this out on Wednesday morning. I'm not looking to hurt Russia. I love the Russian people and always had a very good relationship with President Putin. And this despite the radical left's Russia, Russia, Russia hoax. We must never forget that Russia helped us win the Second World War. I always love
Ouch.
that formulation.
Ouch.
They helped
Ouch.
us. Thank you. Like, thank
Ouch.
you for your assistance.
Yeah, Saving Private Ryan, we're done. Okay.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yes.
I can tell everyone this was immediately translated into Russian and it was on the nightly news. Okay. And every educated Russian, when they hear, we must never forget that Russia helped us. And that's when people get pissed off.
Right. Right.
Big time.
Yeah. Losing almost 60 million lives in the process.
Where did he get
Where
this?
did he get that? It's like it's just 60 million. I mean,
Well, I mean, the historians estimate that that was the total.
yeah, that's what I was going to say. That's usually the estimate presented as the total number of lives lost in World War II. But that, I think that extends across the continents. That includes everyone who also was killed in the wars in the Far East. All of
Yes.
that being said, I'm going to do Russia, whose economy is failing, and President Putin a very big favor. Settle now and stop this ridiculous war. It's only going to get worse if we don't make a deal, and soon I have no other choice but to put high levels of taxes, tariffs, and sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the United States, which again is that, well, that's it, that's your punishment. I mean, there's not very much Russian in terms of Russian goods sold to the United States. But I would imagine he must mean, the sanctions against third parties.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, I mean, I can tell everyone what the Kremlin's response to that was ho hum.
right,
Okay. I mean, okay, now you just want to start antagonizing your friends and allies. Go ahead. Okay.
right, yeah.
Now
Well,
they
whether they're going to obviously they're going to try and hit the Chinese, they're going to try to hit the Indians. I mean, again, things that the Biden administration had already been doing,
hitting
but they're just going to extend what Biden was already doing.
so hitting
Kazakhstan
Russia,
and so on.
hitting Russia, hitting India,
Right,
hitting all at the same time,
right.
everybody.
Oh, no,
All at the same time.
right.
That's not a recipe of diplomacy.
No,
I'm
it isn't. But to be fair, he says I don't want to do it. I want to get this settled. I mean, that's not my first option.
Which episode of The Sopranos was this?
And various other participating countries. Let's get this war, which never would have started if I were president, over with. We can do it the easy way or the hard way, and the easy way is always better. It's time to make a deal. No more lives should be lost. But again, the problem here is that this deal, I mean, we kind of have an idea. He just wants to freeze the conflict in place now. That's not a great deal for Russia. I mean, that's really the problem. It's not a deal that any Russian leader can accept. I mean, it's basically Minsk III, and after the debacle of Minsk I and II, I don't see how any Russian leader can accept Minsk III, particularly after so many casualties suffered. So I just don't
Well,
see how any Russian leader can accept such a deal.
and I think it was before he was inaugurated. He openly talked about Russia's greatest grievance and its NATO expansion.
Right,
No other major politician has said
right,
that. Okay,
right, right.
he said it out loud. So I mean, I guess for some, people like George and myself, there's a great deal of frustration because getting your facts straight is a good way to get started.
Right,
You've said a lot of the right things. It has to
right,
come to an end. You understand Russia's grievance. There's a cocktail being made here.
right, right. No, that's right. So anyway, then this was his remarks at Davos that he delivered through video conference, and he's saying again, he brings up the oil thing. If the oil price came down, the Russia-Ukraine war would end immediately. Right now, the price is high enough that the war will continue. You got to bring down the oil price. You got to end the war. They should have done it long ago. They're very responsible, actually, to a certain extent, for what's taking place. Millions of lives are being lost.
Okay? This whole issue of oil price, it's auxiliary to all of this here, okay? When the special military operation started, the whole menu of possible sanctions were considered. We know that as over the last almost 3 years now. So
Yeah, no,
it's kind of barking up the wrong
he is
tree.
barking up the wrong tree. I mean, I think that he got this information from Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan did drive up oil production in the United States, and that led to the collapse in oil prices throughout the 1980s. But that had nothing to do with what happened in the Soviet Union. It was, I mean, all the sort of neocons and the Reagan adulators said, "Ah, that's it. That was a brilliant maneuver by Reagan to attack oil prices." That's not what happened. That had no impact whatsoever on what happened in the Soviet Union. And no Soviet leader ever said that. It's like there's no evidence that any Soviet leader, you know what it was? The reason why we tossed away the Soviet Union, why we just simply gave up without a fight, is because of oil prices and what Ronald Reagan did. So, um, um, and our efforts to secure a peace settlement between Russia and Ukraine are now hopefully underway. It's so important to get that done. That is an absolute killing field. Again, millions of soldiers are being killed, so that's millions. Nobody has seen anything like it since World War II. They're laying dead all over the flat field, and it's a flat field farmland, and there's millions of Russians, millions of Ukrainians. Nobody's seen anything like it since World War II.
Well,
It's
it's
time to
again,
end it.
again, his heart is in the right place, I guess you can say. But everyone, they're not fighting on farmland. This is what the Ukrainians want to avoid, because very, very soon, as the front moves further and further west, yes, it does turn into flat farmland. It has to be made clear the Russians have not taken all of the Donbass, which is not farmland. Okay, its geography is very, very different. It's very, very difficult for a force that's on the offensive. The advantage is always for the defense. But even if you're when you're overwhelmed, that doesn't make a difference. This is what they're on the edge of moving into flatland Ukraine. And this is what a lot of Ukrainian military people
No,
really work.
that's exactly. If it were farmland, then indeed you could make very quick progress.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
Anyway, one thing very important. I really would like to be able to meet with President Putin soon and get that war ended. And that's not from the standpoint of economy or anything else. It's from the standpoint of millions of lives are being wasted. Beautiful young people are being shot in the battlefield. You know, the bullet, very flat land. And as I said, the bullet, there's no hiding. And a bullet, the only thing stopping a bullet is a human body. And you have to see, I've seen pictures, what's taking place. It's a carnage.
I wish someone would show him pictures of Gaza, but that's another podcast.
Yes, that's right. And we really have to stop that war. The war is horrible. And I'm not talking economy. I'm not talking economics. I'm not talking about natural resource. I'm just talking about there's so many young people being killed in the war. And that's not including the people that have been killed as the cities are being, knocked down building by building. So we really should get that stopped. Now, whatever else you can say about this is a very different tone from what anybody says when they come to Davos. That's not the way Keir Starmer talks. It's not the way Macron talks. It's not the way Sergeant Schultz talks. They say, no, Putin must not be allowed to win. I mean, we're going to do another video about, Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, and what he said at Davos. But this is a very different way of speaking, saying, oh, this is horrific. We need to end it like now. And,
Yes, this is a two-parter. This is part one, everyone.
Exactly, part one. Yeah. Part two follows after the commercial interval.
Yeah, a dog food commercial.
Exactly. Hopefully, China can help us stop the war with, in particular, Russia, Ukraine, and they have a great deal of power over that situation, and we'll work with them. And I mentioned that.
Very interesting. I think that's very interesting that he says that, okay? Because what Trump is doing, again, anomalous for a president of the United States, he is spreading the risk out, okay? Because he's making a gambit. Everybody he's making his case is kind of awkward as it may seem. He's making his case. Do you think he likes talking to Davos people? I don't think so. Okay. He's spreading out the risk. Okay, this is very interesting, and many have suggested, George and I have suggested many times, is that we need much more of a global solution.
Right,
Well, Trump just he's truly thinking global here.
right,
Okay,
right.
how coherent it is, I'm not sure, but it's important.
No, I think so, and I think he's putting forward some proposal to Xi Jinping, and again, he spoke rather warmly in the Hannity interview and at Davos about China. Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to having good relations with China. We had good relations before COVID. I like him. We have good, and I think he hasn't imposed any tariffs yet on China. He hasn't done it, and I think that may be, hey, something to sweeten the pot. If you can work something out here, maybe we can hold off on the tariffs.
And official Kremlin commented on the Western interpretation of Trump's conversation with Xi. Obviously, the Chinese told the Russians what happened, and it was nonplussed for the Russians. They're saying this is a very important strategic relationship. So
Right.
you're talking wedge here, you
No,
know.
no, that isn't. It's not. There's not going to be a wedge, but I guess these things have influence. If you can somehow influence. I don't know how far that will go. I mean,
Yes,
but
but the fact,
I can
George,
see
is
what Trump is thinking.
yeah, but the fact that Trump is saying this, it's very anomalous for an American president to be looking for a buffer
Right,
of sorts, okay,
right,
or legitimacy
right,
in a negotiation.
right. Exactly. And then I mentioned that during our phone conversation with President Xi, and hopefully we can work together and get that stopped. We'd like to see denuclearization. In fact, with President Putin, prior to an election result, which was frankly ridiculous, we were talking about denuclearization of our two countries, and China would have come along. China has,
I'm sorry, George, but which ridiculous
yeah,
election?
it's not clear. He's
So many ridiculous.
He's yeah. The ridiculous is Putin's election. That's the reference. In fact, with President Putin, prior to an election result, which was frankly ridiculous, we were talking about denuclearization of our two countries. Actually, yeah,
I think
it's
he's
not
talking
clear from
about
this sentence
no,
actually what because he's
he's
saying
talking about 2020 because right before
right.
because he
That's right, exactly,
be
and which was
reelected.
frank. We were talking about prior to but the election, the Putin election, was in 2024, so that's a long way after
No,
that.
what I'm thinking is that in his first
All right.
administration, remaining days of it,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
were
yeah. So he's
talking
talking about
about
the,
this.
the 2020 election, his
Right,
elect his election.
and he was interrupted. Now he's back. Okay,
Okay,
that's what I
okay.
think he's
Yeah, no,
talking.
I think that's right. That's what he's saying. In fact, with President Putin, prior to an election result, which was frankly ridiculous, we were talking about denuclearization. Yeah, no, so it's the 20, definitely, yeah, the 2020 election, which was frankly ridiculous because he can't be talking about the Putin election because that was 4 years later. So yeah, yeah. Denuclearization of our two countries, and China would have come along. China has a much smaller right now nuclear armament than us, or field than us, but they're going to be catching it at some point over the next 4 or 5 years. There's a couple of issues there, which is
I'm sorry, George, but I think that did the Davos crowd need some kind of special interpreter because no Western leader talks this way
no,
at these.
no, no. That's right. Well, it's odd that he's suddenly bringing up nuclear weapons, which he didn't really do. He walked away from the INF treaty,
Right.
and he didn't really seem very keen on renewing the New START treaty. In fact, it was the Biden administration that renewed the New START treaty for another 5 years. So that's going to elapse actually quite soon. So it's funny for him to bring this up about nuclear armaments. The other thing which is also interesting is that which should be brought up is that if you are going to talk about nuclear disarmament, other countries need to get involved. I don't think that China can just simply stay, well, it has nothing to do with us. Well, you've got a lot of nuclear weapons. I mean, it has to involve you and Britain and France. I mean, they have to be. So it's really a little bit much. I mean, it was okay when in the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union had so many nuclear weapons that no one had anything comparable, but they don't have as many now as they did then. So I think everyone else needs to be getting involved. We have to start cutting back on Britain and France, particularly as Britain and France's nuclear weapons would be absolutely in use for any war that the United States is involved in.
Yeah, and also George brings up a really good point. I mean, any any American president that wants to talk about getting rid of nuclear weapons is a friend of mine. Okay. How you get there is very, very difficult. George and I are big fans of arms control. But if you're going to mention China, then you're going to have to mention Pakistan and India and Iran's potential nuclear ambitions, and of course, Israel. And I would welcome that conversation. I very much would. Okay.
Right.
I'm not sure if Trump is aware of the global implications.
Well,
If you're going to pull in China, then you're going to have to pull in everybody.
Right, right. I think so. I think if you're gonna, we don't know exactly how much Pakistan and India have. We have vague idea of how much China has, but we just know a great deal about how much the United States and Russia have, and Britain and France. But everybody else, it's always left in a kind of a haze. And of course, Israel isn't going to take part in this. But there's absolutely, if you're going to talk about denuclearization, then everybody has to be involved. It's
Right.
ridiculous that everyone, all the nuclear powers, most of them can just simply sit on their hands and say, yeah, you Americans and Russians, yeah,
You first. You first.
you denuclearize.
You first.
So that was his comments there, and it's really up in the air in terms of what exactly Trump is trying to do here. But obviously, and I think you've said this, there's some kind of negotiation is in place. The problem, of course, that he has is he has all these hawks around him, and sometimes he sounds as if he's one of them. Sometimes he sounds like a peacenik, and so we don't know yet how it's going to play out. At the moment, I don't see anyone around him who is a peacenik. I don't have at the moment. I don't see. We obviously Tulsi Gabbard would be a peacenik, but she's not in the administration yet. The confirmation hearings have yet, I think, are going to be scheduled, sometime, I think late, maybe next week or so on. Very uncertain whether she's going to make it through. She's the one I think the most vulnerable. So basically, it's mostly the hawks, and so but we have to say it's interesting how he's thinking. He's thinking in this way, a kind of a humanitarian response that this killing needs to stop. It's a stupid, ridiculous war. But how do you get from A to B? That's the
Well, like I said, it's an opening gambit. This is the way he sees negotiations. You look at your assets, you look at your opponent's assets. That's how business is done. And he
Right.
obviously, given his past, is going to think that way. Apparently, the fact that he was the 45th president of the United States hasn't really changed the way he sees the world.
Right.
Now, there are these reports of first of all, there's he instituted as one of his executive orders review of distribution of foreign aid. That includes Ukraine, okay? And so,
but that's non-military. That doesn't affect the military aid. It's just non-military.
Financially, it does as
Right.
well. So, and there are Pentagon officials that were involved that had the Ukraine file that are leaving. So there's a lot of ricochets going on right now. George is right. A review of aid, not necessarily including military, but it also affects Ukraine. So there's a lot of things going on right now. There are some reports that there's like these mass layoffs and all of that. I've seen a couple of reports, but it's not firm enough for me to latch onto. George and I try to be very careful here.
Right.
But the message we're trying to send here in part one of two, is that there's movement, and that's really, really good. Okay. starting from this very empathetic projection as his first, yeah, if we were playing a hand of cards, that's his first card on the table. That's a good sign.
Right,
I try to, look for a win anytime we can.
right,
So something's happening.
good.
Last point. I don't know, George. I'm getting this feeling that Trump is going to take the Ukraine file for himself.
I think so too. I think so. He runs foreign policy. I think he's going to be determined that he runs foreign policy. Um, but then he would have to be a little more imaginative. I think just simply taking this line, well, if you don't play ball with me, I'm gonna hit you with sanctions. That isn't going to get him, to where he wants to go, and that just doesn't. Well, the Russians are used to bluster about sanctions. It's not going to affect anything. Even if the sanctions hurt and hurt badly, that's just not going to affect the Russians. So he has to then think more imaginatively about how he can bring this thing to any kind of a satisfactory conclusion. But it's clear he's going to be thinking for himself. He's not going to be listening to the Europeans. He's not going to take any kind of guff from Macron
Oh yeah,
or
it may
or
have
Schultz.
it may just negative returns. That
Right,
their talk, he
right,
doesn't like it. There will be consequences for it because if in the National Security Council around the table, the European representative is going to be in the back. Okay, he
right.
does not care. He is
That's right.
not interested.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. So, what I think in part two, I think we're going to deal with, well, how is NATO responding to this?
A spoiler? Not well.
Not
Anyway,
well.
this is the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Locals, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. This is Friday. George and I are doing a week roundup, our end of week roundup here. We reconvene on Sunday and for our kind of mega review, and then we'll have the live stream on Monday.
Exactly. It's 10 a.m. Eastern time on Monday. Please join us. In the meantime, you got to deal with this hound situation, which is not at all very pretty. These hounds are absolutely ferocious, and when it comes to money, they lose all sense of rationality. So, because money means so much to them. So, if you have a few bob in your pocket, a few bob um, lying around, something under the sofa, something behind the cushions, please take it out, dunk them into the tip jar, keep them on an even keel. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology. And above all, we're going to have calmness, at least for a little while, which is always a blessing. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye bye.